Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I've learned to stay away from land that has been tainted. There's this spot in the woods and near the river, and behind an old school that was apparently used by Satanists before the school opened. Since it was close to a school, the place had a whole bunch of scary stories and sightings from the children, and even the teachers. I never went to the school, but me and my friends were curious. So back in 2006, at around midnight, we all went there to talk and have a smoke. We wanted to see if anything would happen, since it was June 6, 2006. 666, you know? It was a warm night with a clear sky. We sat around talking for a while, then shortly before midnight started to get bored and figured nothing was going to happen. So we started leaving. On the way out, though, in this small clearing right by the river, we saw some white mist about 10 feet above the ground, with a stark black shadow beside it. Neither had any real form. They were just clouds of light and darkness that danced and rolled. It formed right before our eyes, about 20 feet away, and started moving briskly to our left. One of my friends instantly freaked out. The funny thing is, this friend hadn't actually seen anything since he was looking in the opposite direction. He just felt a surge of fear and knew he had to get out of there. He ran to the car while me and another friend watched this thing for a few seconds. But even we got scared and ran to the car as well. I've been a bit of a believer in the paranormal since this happened. We were speechless for a while. We actually never really discussed it beyond the basics. The one who didn't see anything said he felt an evil presence and ran. I personally felt scared, as did the others who saw this. Now here's the final weird part. After this incident, my life fell apart. I was having bad luck at every corner, was seeing things occasionally in a dark room, and was growing increasingly mentally ill, and started abusing drugs and alcohol. Relationships deteriorated. I even tried to kill myself in early 2008. This didn't stop until I visited a medicine man, shaman-type guy, who performed some kind of strange ritual on me in a dark room in 2009. My grandparents are Native American but Christian, so they influenced who I saw. The ritual still confuses me to this day. He spoke in his native tongue as I sat in the middle of a totally black room. I eventually heard soft voices that were coming from neither me or the medicine man, and even felt something brushing against me even though the medicine man wasn't close enough to do anything. He kept telling me to not be scared. After this was done, I felt strangely calm. My life has improved since then. At this point, I had lost contact with my old friends since a lot moved away. But I heard the other guy who saw the mist had a self-termination attempt and wasn't doing well. The one who didn't see anything seems to be doing fine, but apparently has grown more religious since then. I could mention where this location is, but as far as I know, the forest has been cleared and an elevated highway was built over the spot.
I'll tell some stories that my family members have told me. Be my great uncle in the 70s. The military. Leaf. Be on avalanche watch somewhere up north. Was out with a crew. I don't know what they call them. Marking off areas prone to avalanche or something. See someone on the mountain. They aren't supposed to be there. Yell to them, then follow them. Follow the person behind a tree line. They're gone, with no trace. About 100 meters from where they lost track of the guy, they found a body. The body is of someone who died months before, wearing the same color clothing. He was never much for spooks, but said that was a weird experience he had. We'll tell more. Be my grandfather in the 1950s. Working on a farm in a place called Tainted, I think. Said he hated it there because of how off it felt. Stayed at the farmhouse in like a workers' quarters thing with a few other people. The guy who owns the farm is acting real weird. Usually a nice guy, but is super pissy and argumentative all week. A really bad thunderstorm is coming, and the guy forces them to work during the storm using a tractor, other equipment one should not use in a thunderstorm. The storm gets real bad with the rain and lightning. Grandfather looks at the guy to say the storm is too bad. We have to stop regardless of what you think. Guy is swinging 100-pound hay bales with one arm and staring straight ahead. Eyes rolled back in his head. Another yells out, "Jesus Christ, man." Farmer glares at them. Grandfather and the workers all head back to their room. Farmer died out in the field during the night. The preacher later says that the man was not right with God the last few months. The 1950s were spooky. Other grandfather also in the 50s, B. Lumberjack. Power saws were still uncommon here at the time, so we used two-man saws and horses instead of trucks. One really cold day they were working and couldn't get anything to go right as everyone is frozen. See this tall, skinny, kind of shadowy figure watching them from about 100 feet away. Native guy in the group is like, don't let it see your face. Don't even look at it. Grandfather and a few others are spooked as fuck, so they agree. Others from a next-door camp throw things at it and taunt it. At the end of the day, everyone goes back to camp. Native guy is still spooked and tells grandfather it was a Wendigo. People in the other camp have their shit ransacked and doors all scratched to shit, food stolen.
I used to live in a house that was built on bad land, next to a bunch of woods where Satanists practiced whatever it is they do, and allegedly opened some gate, path, or door to another dimension or some shit like that. I've got some good and completely true, but intensely hard to believe stories. Anyone interested? I've tried to type them up before, but in general the idea of the house scares me, so I never know where to start. Pick related. Okay, this is going to be choppy as I remember things in different time periods instead of in a timeline, and the good stuff, read, stuff I have nightmares about, doesn't happen until later. The first weird thing that happened was my mom had a baby when I was 12, and before he could walk, he used to pull himself up to the windows in the back of the house on the second floor and giggle and drop down like he was playing hide and seek. My mom thought it was adorable, but it started getting creepy when he kept doing it, because there was nothing outside. That story isn't the best, but it's the very first thing I remember. The next part was the part that probably started the chain of events, at least that's what my mom thinks. My mom ran a daycare out of the house, so she said children are her weakness, and so, quote, that's what it used to get in the house. That's what my mom said. I guess one day she saw what she thought were small kids standing on the back patio attached to her bedroom and ran to open the door because she thought maybe they needed help or something. But when she opened the door, nothing was there. She convinced herself that her flower pots had just tricked her vision. That's the only things I remember in a row. One of the stories I remember the best was one weekend I came home from staying with my biological father for the weekend, and she and my stepfather were visibly shaken up. Of course, this was ages after the weirdness started, but I finally got her to start talking about what was going on. And the best I can recall, she said she went to use the bathroom and saw a weird shadow, and just kind of called out calmly to my stepdad because it was strange. He kicked the bathroom door in and ran in and scared her and said she had actually screamed terrified, but she says she didn't. So they are looking at this shadow thing that just suddenly started jumping walls and headed into their bedroom where my baby brother was sleeping. My stepdad told me he truly believes he battled death away from my baby brother. I was like 13 years old. I was terrified. I mean, that sounds insane. He says he battled it away from my brother, and I don't know where it went. Just through a wall, I guess. The shadow things hung around a lot. There is a split-level set of stairs in the front of the house, and I remember standing on it and looking outside, because at a certain point it wasn't safe to go outside after dark anymore, and watching a big shadow jump from the shadows of the woods, to the shadows of the cars, to the shadows of the tree in front, then into the house. Every night after the daycare kids went home, 5 or 6 p.m., my dad would take us all out to the four corners of the property, because after doing some research, they had learned to rebuke the land, and that's what they called it. We had to drop everything and rebuke the land. And for a long time, my parents made my brothers and I carry the little prayer on our person at all times, because they were afraid if we weren't with them, we were open to possession. Because that happened too, and I'll get to it. We rebuke this land in the name of Jesus Christ our Savior, and demand that in His name you leave and return from where you came. It didn't do anything, but my parents thought it held the stuff off. We had a ghost camera crew deal come out once too, and took a bunch of pictures. The leader was my father's best friend who had gone to jail for statutory crimes. Relevant because she would never let her children around a person like that, but was so desperate for help that she accepted when he offered. My mother has or had these pictures, but kept them in a small box taped shut with the house written on it. We called the house by the name of the street. Anyway, I've only seen one. It's from the playground that was in the backyard, covered in those white bubbles that people are so keen on calling ghosts. Hundreds of them all over the swing set. So this ghost hunter guy poured salt over all of our entrances and explained it to my mom. And my mom was really excited about the idea, but the salt turned black. Black. I asked him a bit later when I saw him with my father what one would do in that situation, and he just said leave. About the possession thing, I only barely remember this. My mom filled in some blanks when she was still willing to talk about it. I remember walking to my parents' bedroom, and my stepdad was laying on the bed watching TV, and he looked dead, just like he was a dead person, but his eyes slowly moved over to look at me, then back to the TV. It was really gross. Anyway, my stepdad wasn't there during the day. He ran a construction crew and was at work, but I was a kid and didn't think anything of him being home or looking really creepy. The other one, on the same day, was my baby brother. He was probably a little over 1, walking, barely talking. He looks kind of like that kid from Pet Sematary, so in my memory he looks exactly like the kid after it's killed in the movie. He was playing with my mom's daycare kids a little too rough, growling and stealing toys away, biting. So I yelled at him, and he jerked his head up to look at me, then ran around the house and up the long driveway right into the street. I remember him getting hit by a car, but there was nothing there afterward. But I think that is just more of the Pet Sematary movie creeping in. Okay, it's storming here and thundering loudly, and I am scaring myself trying to remember this stuff, so I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in a little while.
You said your stories could be unbelievable, but they seem very believable to me.
Maybe it's just because at the time a lot of people kept telling me they thought my parents were on drugs, so it makes me feel like none of it sounds real. My mom used to take pictures of people she was unsure about, and I remember her taking a picture of a daycare parent, the back of his head, and he had horns, legit devil horns sticking out. He did the Shriners thing, so my parents got really freaked out about the Shriners for a while.
Dude, you gotta find some pictures and post them.
Implying they exist?
Oh, I definitely don't have any, and I don't have any idea where the box my mom has is. She probably burned it by now. Another thing I remember happening is that my dad, pretty disturbed by the people who kept looking out our windows at us, ghost boo, boarded up the windows in the attic. I saw him do it. Then we got in the car and went out for dinner. When we came back, the boards were torn off the windows. I vividly remember that happening, and that one scared me. On the other hand, I do think either my parents hallucinated a lot, or I'm just not sensitive to paranormal stuff, because my dad pointed to his truck a few nights later and asked if I knew the kids sitting in the back. We were standing next to it. It was parked in the front yard. I didn't see anything, and I told him I didn't see any kids, but he was pretty persistent that there were kids sitting in the truck. We had a ton of people coming in and out of our house and staying with us around the end, just out of curiosity, and my parents wanted someone awake to watch the yard at all times. Eventually, they both stopped sleeping and eating, and my mom dropped to about 90 pounds. They also made all the kids that were there stay in one big bedroom. I remember falling asleep on the same bed as my 2 younger brothers, my cousin and his mom. We just had to stay together. Anyway, a woman brought her 3 teenage sons over with her once, and they sat on the stairs and looked out the little window above the door again and pointed directly across the street to our neighbor's house, where a guy on a horse was riding, kinda see-through. He wasn't moving, but the horse was galloping, or so they told me. Never saw that either, even when people were insistent that it was there. Then there was the man who sat on the pile of wood chips in the back. He wore a cowboy hat and had red eyes and a cigarette. Sometimes he would stand and lean on a post, but he always watched the house. The wood chips were from my mom's playground, but after having them for a few days, they became infested with snakes. All you had to do was look at it, and the thing would move. There were so many. And for now, I have at least one more. One night while we were out rebuking, my parents had built these huge crosses in the woods at the 4 points. I couldn't walk into the woods because I had no shoes on, so I stood at the edge with my aunt and we could hear them saying it, and we closed our eyes, like you're supposed to. I heard small, quiet footsteps around me and thought to myself that it was strange. Then when I reopened my eyes, everyone was standing around me and kind of holding on to me, and I was confused. My dad told me something had run out and gotten me and dragged me into another dimension, and he had to chase it and drag me back. My aunt said I was screaming and no one knew what to do. What? A little earlier, my dad had started carrying this post with a crucifix drilled to the end of it, and at the beginning of that night, I remember seeing him swinging it around and just staring at it, and he said to my brother and I, "Look, it's glowing like a lightsaber." I was 15 at that point, and I knew something was really wrong. I almost ran away from home a lot, and my mom considered making me go live with my biological father. Oh, I remembered another bit. My mom was convinced there was a female demon living in the woods next to our house. She would stare at the trees and see her face move and form in the trees. She was supposed to be like a darker, scarier version of my mother, with black hair and eyes and severe features, who my mom was going to have to fight or battle for her soul or something. I do remember thinking, I could see a face watching up in the trees. I went to stay with my aunt one night and came back wearing a black shirt I had, and my mom stared at me like I was a monster walking in the door and got really nervous, then demanded I go take off the outfit and put on normal clothing. She told me she legitimately thought I was an agent for the demon who had finally come to fight her. A few weekends later, after coming home from staying with my biological father, my mom was crying a lot and took me aside and said, "A little birdie told me we can't keep both of you. One of you has to go." About myself and my brother, we share both the same parents. I didn't understand and I was scared. She started threatening to put us up for adoption a lot at that point, although I'm sure she doesn't remember it now and would hate herself for it. I know it doesn't sound scary, just like crazy parents or something, but all of that is terrifying to hear at 15. Are you sure your parents weren't just nuts?
Are you sure your parents weren't just nuts?
Be me, be 7 years of age, moved into a house that parents said was haunted. Go into the basement to see what was down there. There was this massive slot car track down there. OMG, this is going to be awesome. Try to get the cars to work, only to realize the power cord is gone. I tried moving the cars, but they were really stuck in the tracks. Disappointed, I go to find my parents. Before I headed up the stairs though, the slot cars began moving on their own. Never went downstairs again alone. Same house on Christmas Eve. Full moon, clear sky outside. I live in the suburbs, and there are not trees and bushes near any of my windows. I am asleep, and have my first nightmare. I dreamed I was floating in a meditation position through some decrepit hall, with tiny rooms all down it, that looked like cells. Each room had a single metal folding chair in it, moonlight pouring into the room to illuminate the chairs. Creepy .jpg. Get to the end of the hall, and I am suddenly in my living room. My father was sitting on the couch, looking pissed, but he is frozen in time for some reason, and the longer I look at him, the more scared I get. I decided to go outside. Blazing red sky, and it's sundown. The world almost looks like it's in a firestorm, but no fire. Dusty, orange, and empty. I feel something drip on my head. Realize it's blood. I look up, and there is this little boy that I have never seen before. He has a pail of blood and guts, and he just starts dumping it on my head. I woke up from the dream. I realize that my bedroom door is open by just a crack, and there is nothing but absolute darkness outside of it. Full moon light is pouring in from the 2 windows I had. realized that there were two shadows towering over the entrance of the door, like 8 feet tall or something. I could make out eyes on their heads, and they looked like they were wearing hats. Literally frozen in fear, I hid under the covers and eventually fell back to sleep.
Okay, you want a legit non-LARP story? Here it goes. Last year in February, me and my young sister were in our kitchen making dinner. I was making kielbasa with onions, mushrooms, and peppers over white rice with a nice gravy, and the two of us were talking about weird things that have gone on in the house. There was a bit of snow on the ground, and it was about 30 degrees outside. The rest of my family went out on the trails with their sleds for most of the day. I live in a very unique house. The back portion is from the 1790s, while the front is from the very early 1800s. The back portion had an actual full butler pantry, as well as a servant's living quarters above the kitchen. We have since removed the stairs and we have started basic remodeling to open the kitchen a little more. Inside the full pantry is a door that leads to the back of the house, where a small road used to go in between my house and my neighbor's house. And in the main kitchen there is a doorway leading to the side of the house that is the original pathway leading to the road. The pathway is a mix of old flat stone and cement laid out on the ground that leads to the front of the house and then goes into the embankment in front of the house. Our kitchen table is right in the middle of the kitchen, and so as I was cooking, my sister sat on the other side of the table with her back turned against the doorway. This is where things went bad, and she ended up running upstairs and locked herself in her room. We were talking about my experiences with ghosts as a child when all of a sudden we heard footsteps walk right up to the door in the kitchen behind her, and a soft woman's voice asked in a curious manner, "What are you doing?" And then we heard footsteps on the rock and cement path outside, and then it sounded like someone walking in snow. As soon as I heard it, I turned around and stiffened halfway, and in doing so, my sister ran upstairs crying again.
Pretty spoopy, but a lot of unnecessary info. I'm surprised I read it all honestly.
I included a lot of detail about the house because this house is odd, and many people do not know that the dirt path between my house and the neighbor's is a 300-year-old road back when my neighbor's house was an inn. The old road goes straight into the woods, and we have found a few old iron horseshoes while putting in plants in the yard. One of the reasons as to why I included info about the servants' quarters is due to the fact that when we moved in, my sister would run out of her room at night claiming to hear footsteps coming up the stairs. It got so bad that eventually we decided to tear them out after we all heard what sounded like someone walking up to them as we were eating dinner. I have more. So I went into my room and grabbed my .45 and went out into the yard to see if I could find anyone on the property or find footsteps. It was still snowing, and thanks to that fresh blanket on the ground, the only footsteps I saw were mine that lead from the kitchen to the other side of the house. I went back inside and cleaned up my sister's mess, then went back to making dinner. That night, my family came home at roughly 11 p.m., and by that time my sister had run downstairs as our mother came home and began to tell her about what happened. I told her the same thing almost in verbatim about what had happened. I normally end up watching my younger siblings to help my parents when they need to head out for a bit, and I don't mind. However, this is the second house I've lived in with them that has been haunted or tainted. Our first Halloween here was pretty bad with activity, but it has since slowed down. A lot of what we experience are footsteps and phantom voices. One time we were running around the house and from the basement we heard a woman yell, "Knock it off." All four of us heard it. They ran upstairs and locked their door as I instructed. Again, I grabbed my .45 and went downstairs, and our basement is only half the house and is small with very few places to hide. I found no one. So I went up into the kitchen, locked the door, and called them back down. That night they clung to me like glue, and to be honest, I don't blame them. I have heard everything they have. We now have a dog in the house after some really bizarre happenings this past year, and now that he's getting older, he won't go near the basement door anymore. I personally have heard footsteps running down the basement stairs when I was alone in the house several times, and once I even opened the door as I heard them. And time after time, no one is there. The creepy thing is that most of my town is known to be haunted, with many old homes empty for most of the year.
Not a nope story, but somewhat spooky nonetheless. I was 4 years old, sleeping in my bunk bed with my brother above me. I wake up to an old man in a black tuxedo with salt and pepper hair, a mustache, and wearing aviators. It's dark in here, why the sunglasses? He's kneeling down in front of me, smiling gently. I'm not scared. I actually feel comforted. He asks me questions about my life, like how's kindergarten, etc. Before he leaves, he tells me to go back to rest, and a single tear trails down his left eye. I turn around and lie in bed opposite to him, facing the wall the bed is pushed to. I sleep easy. Fast forward later in the week or the next day, I can't remember specifically. My mother pulls out an old photo. It's the old man in a black tuxedo with thick salt and pepper hair, a mustache, aviators, and that warm smile. I point out that I know that man. My mom is instantly baffled and asks how. I tell her he talked to me the other night at my bed, and he was really nice. She has tears going down her face. I find out he's my grandfather, who died a year before I was born. I saw him again when I was 5 for about 10 seconds, then he vanished. He stared at me with that warm smile, another tear, and was gone. He was a really shitty father, alcoholic, abusive, made a complete 180 when he became a grandfather, and my mom loves him to death now. I remember the stance he was in both times, especially the second time. Where he was in the house, how he held himself, how he positioned his hands, all that good stuff. My mom has a psychic she visits that tells us he stays with our family, plays with her toes when she's sleeping. My mom was always his favorite.
Be me in 2013. My mother died a year ago. Old house on an old street. The street used to literally be nothing but farmland, and even further back, native hunting grounds. Always had issues with going in our basement. Was only half finished with a bar and some covered supports, but no paint or flooring other than cement. Had 4 rooms, the boiler room, the laundry room, a bathroom, and the main basement. The bar was still intact, but the bathroom was locked, shut down, and freaky as hell. I had 2 family dogs, an old pug and a German Shepherd mix. The pug hated the basement. The mutt was always on guard in the basement, always followed someone downstairs growling, needed to do laundry. Let the dog outside so he wouldn't bother me downstairs. Get to the very bottom of the stairs and turn right to go to the laundry room. In order to get to the laundry room, you had to pass the bar and go across the main room. The boiler room was located behind the bar and was a small, dank room with a few shelves in it. I turned to walk past the bar and see what looks like a hairless anorexic cancer patient leaning in the doorway of the boiler room. Maximum overdrive engaged. I run so fast up the stairs I actually skipped half of them. After I'm done being a chicken shit, I let the dog in and decide to go back down. I need laundry. The dog growls as always, but walks right past the boiler room. I follow. And don't see cancer, man, get my laundry and set up shit, etc. Turn on the washing machine and it starts banging away. It was some old piece of shit from the 80s, always banged and boomed when running. But it didn't make scratching noises. The dog hears it too. Begins sniffing at the locked-up bathroom. The walls were old and small holes where they met. Got the smart idea to look in the bathroom. Just went full spurg.jpg. See the back of this cancer demon. Ran so fast I banged my head into a low support beam.
Okay, only got one story for you guys. I've not mentioned this story anywhere else besides here on X a couple of times. Be me a couple years ago getting ready to get some good old sleep. Average night from what I can remember, nothing out of the ordinary. Such is the life of a shut-in gamer. Fixing up my bed, letting my mind wander. Next thing I know, it is dead silent, Slowly gather my thoughts as I try to comprehend what is going on. Senses slowly come back to me, and I start to realize everything is pitch black. Start thinking to myself, okay, maybe I was just really tired and crawled into bed without remembering. Start to get more of my senses back, feeling nothing but cold chills throughout my body. Try to get a feel for my blankets without moving, because I just want to go back to sleep. Realize I'm laying flat on my back. Odd. I don't sleep on my back. No blankets, what the fuck? At this point, I'm weirded out, but still groggy, and finally decide to open my eyes to see the situation. I see what seems to be, what I assume to be, my blankets being tented over me. What? Feeling confused, tired, and scared at this point, but still manage to keep my wits about me as I try to figure out what the fuck is going on. Slowly look down to the end of my bed to see some kind of creature looking at me. This thing looked to be elongated with no distinguishable features on it anywhere, besides it having unusually elongated limbs, body, and facial features. All pale gray or white skin, but I could only focus on its face. It had these holes for where it should have had eyes, and its mouth was just the same, along with it forcing this eerie smile. It looked to be as if it were holding up the blankets as it peered in from the front of my bed. Now, not much else happened after this. Just me instinctively kicking at the creature only to find myself waking up on my back while on top of my neatly made bed. Which is really damn odd for me, at least. Just how vivid that whole scenario was, and how disturbing how vague that all played out had always stuck with me. It gets a bit harder to remember this as time goes on. But still, every time I do, I always get this sense of despair or fear, along with immediately start having tears build up. It all felt too surreal for it to be just a dream or whatever, and I have no idea or explanation for any of that. So, yeah, there you go.
I moved to a small Oregon town. I drive a '98 Nissan Pathfinder. My family has lived in this town for decades. I make friends and introduce myself around town. I start working for a local lady who does landscaping. A few months in, I drove to her house to get ready for work. A sheriff sees me, flips out, and pulls me over. We've become friendly, so I assume he wants to say hi. He looks puzzled and asks me how I managed to unflip my car. I say, what? He says they got people calling him and saying I flipped my car out at Broadbent Road and they thought I was injured. Me and my car are obviously fine. I say fuck it and go to work. My boss is rushing to her car when I get there. She sees me pull up and is visibly shaken. She heard my car was flipped and was getting ready to go tell my wife. I say LOL what? I'm fine though. The whole fucking day, every client assumed I was dead. We went driving down Broadbent Road. It's a long fucking road, but there were no signs of a car. Someone put a cross out at a random ditch though. No one has any idea who. The cross is technically on private property. We knock on the guy's door, give him the rundown of said events, and ask him if he knew who put the cross there or what it was for. He has no clue. To this day, every time I drove down that road and past that sign, I get goosebumps. But I constantly think about swerving and crashing, like I'm supposed to fulfill some kind of prophecy. I don't know. Maybe I'm just going crazy.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.